Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life. Remember the 5th of November, the day that Jordan Houghton finally had a shot at Home Park. Fireworks at Home Park saw Obafemi add himself to the list alongside the likes of Wild, Hardy, Jervis, Hurahan, Smith, Hartley and co. as he shrugged off Regan Poole to rocket the ball home as Argyle secured points with a late goal for a 5th game in a row at Fortress Home Park. Joining me tonight, I'm going to go anti-clockwise. Sam Down, how's things?
You normally leave me till last hour. It's almost like we've got somebody important on or something. I don't get it. No, things are okay. Thank you.
Good. Adam Price, how's life?
Yeah, great. I mean, it's wonderful to hear Sam describe me as someone important on, unless there's anybody else he means. So yeah, thank you very much. All good my end. Thank you.
And of course, delighted to be joined by a man who made over 400 Football League appearances with the likes of Ipswich Town, Leeds United, Blackpool, Portsmouth, unfortunately, and 243 of those coming for Plymouth Argyle. David Norris, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, good to see you guys.
It's not been too long since obviously we had you on for our pod, but you lied to us. You said that you were retiring and that you were done. You were done with football, but you've since signed for Workington AFC.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was retired. I was genuinely retired this time. The past few times I've sort of hinted at it. I've kept myself fit. I've played in charity games, but this time I hadn't really. I was focusing a bit more on work, and it was a previous manager, an old manager I got really well with. He's got a young team, and he just said, "Can you just come into the changing room, just help me get my point across, help the young lads?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I've not played. I'm retired." He was like, "Don't worry about that. It's more just to be in and around it, and come in just 4 games a month. That'll be it, just to get in." Right, okay, no problem. And I think I'm 2 months in now, 8 games, 9 games in, and I'm not sure where it's going to go to. So yeah, I did retire. I am in my head coming out short term from retirement.
Yeah, we when we tweeted about you coming on, pretty much every single question was, can he bring his boots down to Home Park? We're so thin on the ground. I don't suppose you could still do it at championship level. Could you come into the dressing room, help the younger lads through like you are at Workington, but at Argyle?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd give anything. Yeah. I would. To be honest, I mean, my game hasn't really changed. We wear the pods and get all the data fed back to us, and my stats are not too dissimilar when I was a professional. My distance covered, high intensity sprints and stuff. So yeah, I think though my contract would have to be play once a week, train once a week, and that would have to be it, because my recovery is the one, and the bumps and bruises that it takes on the body. But yeah, to play one more game would be incredible. I'd love it.
Yeah, that would be class, to be fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sam, why don't you give us your customary post-match run-through on yesterday's win in the Dockyard Derby?
Yes,
as I know you like to call it.
Well, I think the first and best thing you can say about it is that it was a win. Not a convincing win at all, I would say. But it's good to be on the right side of one of those after so many games last season where we would go out of a game and fans would say to us, and even this season, it sometimes has been said, "Oh, you're such a good team. You are the better teams we played, and we just lost. We've been a bit naive and not had enough to get the win done, despite playing better for some or all of the game." It's good to be on the end of the opposite game to that. It's good to be the sort of gnarly, experienced championship team, because we don't get to play that role very often. And Pompey being the slightly naive, newly promoted team that couldn't quite convert their decent build-up play into significant chances, and obviously certainly not into a goal. That being our first clean sheet of the season, after I made a bit of a meal on the previous podcast about how we didn't have a clean sheet all season. Then we got our first one. We've also not had an away win either, hint, hint. We did not play well first half whatsoever. I think we were really poor first half, to be honest with you. Pompey pressed us very well. Their physicality, their intensity had the better of us. They had a lot of occasions where they got the ball into dangerous areas. what I would say is that even though they got the ball in dangerous areas quite a lot, it still didn't often convert to really clear-cut chances. Obviously, they had their disallowed goal, which was offside. And furthermore, the only other, I'd say, really decent chance they had first half was the Ogilvy header from the set piece that was, quite comfortably saved by Grimshaw. But let's be clear, despite that, they were still the better team in the first half. As the comment up on the screen just there says, we couldn't get it out of our halfway line, barely. On the couple of occasions we did get it over the halfway line, we actually looked half decent. Obviously, we had a big offside of our own. And actually, watching that one back, I don't actually think that one was offside, or it was much more borderline than the Pompey one, which was the Al-Haj chance from, I believe, was it JB crossed it in? I can't remember. No, Isaka crossed it in, and Al-Haj missed when it was given offside anyway, but I think it actually was on. So, despite Pompey having much more control, we did have I'd say the best bit of play of the first half that Al-Haj really should have found the target from. Second half, again, similar story. They got it in a lot of dangerous areas, but again, if I'm honest, from Pompey, it was a bit sort of all fur coat, no pants. They didn't really open us up greatly. And then obviously, we then did start to get a little bit more control of the game, and then it was obviously Obafemi's goal. There was a couple of other little moments. There was the Houghton chance that got everybody off their feet, but kind of said, with all respect to Jordan Houghton, that's probably the player you don't want that to fall to, really, on the edge of the box. I think if it had been Adam Randall, we might have been a bit more excited, but I'm sure Jordan Houghton would be the first stage, not a goal scorer. I think he's only got one goal since returning to the club in 2021. So it is what it is with that one. And then we obviously had the excellent long ball up the pitch from Grimshaw. Obviously, Pompey the defender doesn't get enough of a head on it, and then it goes to Obafemi, who gets into a good shooting position, cuts in and fires it into the net. And again, that's probably the best chance of the game, really. So I think Pompey had the larger quantity of chances, but we had the better quality of the chances we did have. Overall, it probably about evens itself out in terms of sort of chances created. They had quite a lot more low to mid-range opportunities. We had a fewer mid to high-range opportunities, I would say, and we scored the main one we got at the end. So I think we're probably a little bit lucky. Yes, I did say all fur coat and no pants in response to that comment. We probably got a bit lucky. I think a draw would have been a fair reflection of the balance of play. They had more of the territory, but we had more of the danger. It was a bit of a sloppy performance. Again, we were a bit too sweet through the middle. I think Pompey kind of realised that we, as seems to be a lot of the discourse on Twitter at the minute. I do think it's correct that we really like to play through the middle, and when we get squeezed and when they compact in the middle of the park, we don't really get it out wide very much. Ultimately, a good adaptation would be to use Isaka out wide. And the one time we did, he looked quite rapid, ran at the defender, and we won a corner. So we could have used the wide areas more, should have used the wide areas more. It was a bit sloppy. It was a bit scrappy. Lots of passes just were a bit overhit or a bit underhit. Nobody had a great game, but it was two poor teams, if I'm truthful. But we got the win done, and I think Pompey are in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, David, sorry to come back to you, but as a man with a vested interest in both sides, what did you make of the game as a whole last night?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it pretty well there. I agree. I think Portsmouth were very good first half. I thought their pressing was excellent. It was a tough watch, watching Argyle play out from the back and just one misplaced pass, one close. I mean, it happened a few times. Portsmouth are obviously in a place where, if they've won their last four, they probably go and score a couple of them, but they're not in a great place themselves. And I think that's probably lucky for Argyle that was the case, because they definitely take some risks. And it was a panicked watch. It was one of the very few games I've managed to watch all the way through for Argyle. So, I mean, for me, it wasn't working. I would have, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just gone a little bit more direct with quality, or into the wider positions, and just maybe change the pattern of the game, because they had a couple of decent counter attacks, which they did look dangerous on, but in general, it looked like Portsmouth were the home team, and I just expected a little bit more from Argyle, knowing how vulnerable Portsmouth were. It was a chance to have a right go at them, get in their faces, start the game fast, closing them down almost like Portsmouth were doing to Argyle. I thought it would be the other way round and, set the stall out, but it didn't really start off like that. It was a tough first half. They've come in, luckily at 0-0, and I think Portsmouth would have been very happy and disappointed that they weren't ahead. And so, yeah, it changed a little bit in the second half. I mean, the goals come from a direct ball. It doesn't have to be a hoof ball, but, sometimes just mixing it up, changing up the way you play to try and change the way the game's going isn't a bad thing. And they've got a couple of decent lads up there who can be strong and hold the ball up. I didn't think it happened for Gray so much in the first half, but I can see what he possibly can bring on his day. And so, yeah, I think second half was better. I think they got lucky with, managing to get the win, but it was a huge win. And I think at this stage, it was a massive 3 points for whoever was going to take it for both teams. I mean, the only thing is, it's not one of them where you've won the game and it's given you loads of confidence now to go into the next game because the performance wasn't great. I think everyone's still a little bit, it wasn't great. We don't know now what's going to happen in the next game. It's going to still be where normally if you can come off a really good win, get 3 points, you go into the next game full of confidence and ready to take anyone on, where I just don't feel it's left that taste in the mouth of, a really confidence boosting win. It's just 3 points and it was massive.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, the both of them have mentioned it already, but, last night sort of papered over some of the cracks. But how many times have we seen Argyle go into a game against a team in and around us that we feels like a must win and we don't manage to pick up those 3 points? It's nice for it to be the shoe to be on the other foot for once.
Yeah, it really is. It feels great, and I can understand why fans of other clubs have loved having that feeling against us for a few years. I think it's testament actually to how we have in some areas improved from last season. I'll pick up on what David said there about the strikers and the players up front that we've got. I know I said it on this podcast before, and I'm probably going to say it a number of times again. The fact that we have Michael Obafemi on the bench, Ryan Hardy, and not getting any minutes at all, it's such a far cry from the limits we had up front last season. The fact we're able to, be in that situation of bringing one of those on, being able to change the game. Hopefully, they get their moment yesterday. Obafemi did. It wasn't the prettiest goal he ever scored. Some people might describe it as all pants, no fur coat. But he got the ball in the net, and that's all we need. So, I think that is probably why the shoe's on the other foot on this occasion. I think it's the fact that we have a lot of discussions about recruitment in the summer. I'm sure that will go on and on as we go right up to the next transfer window. We've made some good signings, we've made some poor signings, but that difference maker up front to bring off the bench is something that it's not felt like we've had in a very long time. Certainly not at championship level. And being able to do that and get the points there is I mean, it does paper over the cracks. It's not a wonderful performance, and if we come out of that with a draw, which I think would probably be fair, we're probably just satisfied with it. But as I say, it's a wonderful feeling for a change, for it to be on the other foot, and for us to be the team that doesn't particularly play brilliantly and gets the points. Again, it's one of those where, again, much as David said, it's not one of those wins that you think, oh yeah, that's going to kickstart your season, that's going to be a momentum builder. There is still work to do. And Derby is going to be pretty telling at the weekend, I think, just going into the next international break as to just how much work has been done and how much more still needs to be done when the players are back. But ultimately, it's much nicer to be in the situation of having this discussion on the back of 3 points than having it after dropped points, particularly in a game as big as yesterday's.
Yeah, absolutely. Some full-time thoughts, which I haven't done for a couple of weeks because I keep forgetting that I asked for them. Nick says, a very poor advertisement for Championship football last night. I suspect any casual watcher saw that and is wondering how the second tier can be such a terrible standard, almost priceless 3 points, but not a look forward to on Saturday. Paul Burke says, weirdly feel flat after a late winner. It was a poor performance, and we were lucky to nick it. Better second half than first. I thought Wright and Obafemi made a big difference. The much maligned Wright, including by me, was head and shoulders above Al Hadj. We'll get on to him in a second. Clean sheet and 6 points off the playoffs, says Lee. I don't think we're going to be looking up towards the playoffs anytime soon, but I'll take it. If we win the next two and we're sitting pretty in the playoffs, I won't mind. Strictly Plymouth says, was very, very worried at how we've won that. I have no idea. And Jay says, can't pretend that was even a decent performance, but a win's a win. So basically what we've already said, just a lot shorter and quicker. On that, Adam, I'm going to come back to you. Social questions. Michael Savage just says, we need to talk about Al Hadj. And what have you made of his performances since?
Yeah,
obviously he started so well, didn't he?
Yeah. He's, I think, a couple of times I mentioned the credit in the bank that he's got from that Luton goal. 8 minutes into his full debut, scoring a goal like that doesn't get much better. I think that credit's, if it's not run out, it's running low at this point, because I was really disappointed yesterday. I'm particularly across the last two games, the last two home games where we've had Al Hadj playing against Preston and Portsmouth. Now, going into both of those games, these have been two teams that have been statistically some of the most vulnerable to through balls in the division. And you feel like that's tailor-made for Rami Al Hadj. That's what the promise of him being brought in, that creative talent that he's got. Those two games in front of our own fans should have been ones where he's absolutely taken the game, taking control of proceedings and setting up chances, and in an ideal world, getting a couple of assists. And he's just seemed a bit anonymous, I want to say. Now, that's not to say that let's write him off as a bad sign. Of course not. There's still plenty left, and I still think there is possibly an element of building up that fitness still. He's still not had the full preseason. He still wasn't playing for Odense in, I think I've said that right, Odense in the Danish league. So it's there are mitigating circumstances, but I think the fact that you could tell the difference when Callum Wright came on was pretty telling, because so my friend who I go to the games next to me was saying, I think Callum Wright's going to improve us. I think he's been better than Al Hadj. And I'm thinking, well, steady on. I maybe right a little, but I don't think I reached those levels. He did. He was right. He reached those levels and more. And the extra spark, the extra, it almost felt like we had an extra man then in there who was willing to get involved, willing to try and create, which I think was a huge factor in changing the game in our favour. So it's a tough one with Al Hadj, because he is obviously very talented, and the fact that we brought him in on the final day of the transfer window, it almost felt like at that point that was a stage where we hadn't created a single big chance all season. We were really struggling in front of goal. The next day we played against Stoke, probably should have beaten them, but couldn't get near creating a chance and lost the game. And there's kind of like, Rami Al Hadj is going to be the saviour here, and when he comes in and starts like he does, expectations are obviously sky high. So they've reduced for now. It's not a write-off by any means, but right now when I'm looking at them, and I think, would I feel more confident with Rami Al Hadj or Callum Wright starting the next game? I'm going for Wright at Derby at this point. And I didn't think I'd be saying that a week ago. So it's it's a tough one. I'll come up to another point as well of the fact that we're in the midst of injury struggles, and it's a squad game, so they're both going to get opportunities anyway. And Rami Al Hadj, I've no doubt, will have better games. But I'd like to see him get up to speed now sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm not usually one to overreact, but I remember that first game against Luton, and I was calling for Rami Al Hadj to win the Ballon d'Or. So hopefully he's still in with a shout next year. Obviously, Rodri picking it up this year. It's about time a central attacking midfielder reclaims it next year. Whilst we're on midfielders, and I suppose there's nobody better to ask than yourself, David. Jack says, I've slept on it. What are your thoughts on our lack of a midfield, putting pressure on the rest of the team and not being able to counter any team that presses us high? I think Sam touched on it earlier about that we usually go through Adam Randall, and without him, we're sort of struggling in the middle of the park.
Yeah, I think Portsmouth got it right yesterday with the pressure they were putting on, made it very difficult. So it didn't look like, obviously, I haven't seen too many full games, but it didn't look like it was working. I always feel I know you've got Randall who's a very good player, but the other way, I just feel like it was a lot of facing their own goal, trying to make it work to then move it forward. Where, like I say, sometimes I like it to just be a little bit more direct and be going that way, and turning it round. As a midfield, I always prefer to be obviously facing that goal and doing our stuff higher up the pitch. And the gap for me just seemed too big. We've had a couple of counter attacks, but in general it just seemed like that there was big distances that the midfield couldn't make up. And I mean, it didn't look for like a lack of effort. It just looked like that wasn't working for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sat down, Pompey had their moments. They had the best of it. Obviously, the first 60 minutes, have you already mentioned? A few flashes across the box. Josh Murphy, or is he the other one? They're both identical twins, aren't they? Josh Murphy should have had at least one of those in the back of the box, back of the net. Good with words, as always. Podcast host definitely helps. Pompey will be absolutely furious coming away from that without at least a point minimum, weren't they?
Well, they will, but then again, it was a lot of those where the ball sort of went across the box, and if somebody had just been in the right place, then they might have stuck a leg out and got it in. There's a lot of ones where people were in the right place and then the ball was a bit overhit. And ultimately, the magic of chance creation is, you've got to get all the ducks in a row at the same time. It has to be the player in the right space and the ball into the right space. They had a lot of nearly moments. They had a lot of half chances. But I think probably their best chance of the game from open play, when a player's actually made a connection to the ball, and maybe Adam might correct me if he thinks of any other ones of his stat data that he has, is probably the Ogilvy header in the first half, which wasn't a great chance. I mean, yes, they had so many little chances build up that you'd think maybe they probably should have scored one of them, and I probably would agree, but they didn't have a lot of quality. They didn't have a chance as good as the one we scored from. That's what I would say. So yes, they'll be frustrated, and they'll certainly be frustrated with where they are in the league, because they'll be panicking. They've worked so hard to get up here, and they look like they're going back down after one season. It kind of reminds me of how we started the 2017-18 season under Derek Adams. We'd worked so hard to get back up to League One, and then we were right at the bottom in October and November. Not that I think Pompey will have a run up to 7th place in the league like we did that year at all, but who knows? But yeah, I'm going a little bit off on a tangent like I do, but I think they'll be frustrated.
Yeah, you are a bit.
Yeah, just a little. But can they look at that game and honestly say they feel they should have come away with a win? I don't think so. I think Pompey did enough probably not to deserve to not lose the game, but I don't think they can say they deserve to win, in all truth. They looked at quite a limited side, like David touched on in his piece on the game, and like I said myself, the pressing was probably the best thing about them. They were very organised. They pressed as a unit. They were physical. They didn't make life easy for us trying to play out, and I agree with that. But when they got the ball, I just felt they had little quality, in truth. I think Lang was very involved, but quite wasteful. Murphy, Sorinola, maybe at times was a bit loose on him, but Murphy didn't really do a lot with it. I think probably their best player was Potts in midfield. I think he was a good quality player. He drove the ball forward quite well, but I don't think if I was a Pompey fan, I don't think I would be honestly saying we deserved to win that game if I were them, because I don't think they did.
Fair enough. We've already mentioned Callum Wright. Obviously, no, we haven't. We already mentioned Al Hajj, Adam, but Callum Wright he was replaced by Callum Wright, wasn't he? This is going well. Who I thought was exceptional. I think you've already answered this. Basically, just said, is he one of his better performances in green, closer to what he's capable of? How do we get that out of him more regularly? And the second part of that question is, does he start at Derby? And you've already answered that, so ignore that bit. But how do we get that sort of performance out of Callum Wright more regularly?
I'll ignore part 2, but for people joining us late, yes, I'd start him there. So that's that dealt with. Yeah, I do wonder with Wright. He's with a player with that much talent. I just wonder if it is the fact that it is inconsistency, and it is the fact that he's not able to hit those levels all the time that stopped him being a championship regular in his career. Because on his day, he's clearly got it, hasn't he? He was, I know I've mentioned already, is a clear upgrade on what Al Hajj was doing yesterday. And I'll always go back to the assist he got for Edwards against Hull on the last day, which was a wonderful cross and a wonderful bit of thinking to see the mismatch at the back post and get Edwards there. So how do you get him doing it more often? Is a question that somebody much more qualified than me needs to be able to answer, and that's why Wayne Rooney earns the big bucks, I guess. Because I think Callum Wright has been blighted by inconsistencies throughout his career, particularly at this level. And if he wasn't, I don't think we'd have been able to get him from Blackpool when we did, because I think he'd have been starting for them at this level at that time. So it's a tough one. I guess there's the obvious one is that a player's always gaining confidence and is better when they've got a run of games, which I think would lead credence to the theory that he should start at Derby. If you give him a run in the team and he keeps delivering, then he keeps the shirt. I guess that has to be the way. But yeah, how to have him play like that all the time it's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because from his performance yesterday, I do agree it was very, very good. And if we can get him playing like that regularly, because we haven't had him like that, to use an awful cliche, it would be like a new signing in a sense. The fact that we've got somebody there who hasn't necessarily been delivering for us at the Championship. I haven't mentioned his League One spell yet, which is obviously very different. I thought he was one of those players who is perhaps far too good for one level, not quite good enough for the other. But he's got the talent. So if somebody who isn't me, because I don't know, can get that talent out of him more regularly, I think we're in a very good place.
The Cameron Jerome in our midfield. Not quite.
Just jump in on that. So I completely agree with what Adam said, but we sort of have seen this before with Callum Wright, haven't we? We had that really good cameo off the bench, and then we put him in the starter game, and he just sort of goes missing for the first half. It does seem to be a bit of a repetitive story. Does he deserve another chance? I'd say, yeah, he probably does, but that's probably more. He's kind of lucky to get that chance because Al-Hadj just had a few very quiet games in a row. So, yeah, I probably would start him at Derby, but we have seen this so many times where he's had a good game off the bench and then just completely sort of ghosted when he's starting. Again, not necessarily ghosting through lack of effort, but he just doesn't pick up the spaces. He doesn't pick up the runs off the shoulder like he does when he comes on as a sub. He seems to really, really thrive against tired legs in a way he doesn't do against busy legs. So I'm a little bit less optimistic that he will settle to becoming a regularly good Championship player. Ultimately, for an attacking midfielder, since the start of last season, he has only scored one assist and 0 goals at this level. Which is not great for all the good moments he has had. So I really hope he does prove me wrong, but I'm not entirely convinced that he's got it to be starting. But we'll see. And I guess Al-Hadj, as we've sort of said, that excellent first game against Luton. Apart from that, yes, he was all right. He was pretty good against Blackburn, but pretty much every other game from that, he's been poor. So it's a bit of a problem position. Maybe we just throw enough of the proverbial wall and hope that some of it sticks, I guess. But that's our best hope.
It was right. That's the other side of the coin, isn't it? I was just going to say, I know I've mentioned the consistency and the being in the team, getting confidence. There is, of course, that if he's not being good enough to be in the team, then has he earned his place, and therefore does he deserve to have that opportunity to build confidence? It's a catch-22 situation probably with him. He could very much do with a good performance from the start on Saturday to ease some of those fears.
Yeah, Sam, from one substitute to another, obviously Michael Obafemi, 4 touches, 1 goal, absolutely clinical. What did you make of his impact? And much like the Callum Wright question, has he earned a start on Saturday?
More so, but then again, 3 touches and 1 goal is pretty much the perfect performance off the bench, isn't it? I think with Obafemi, again, he's another one who has had some good games, but also had some where he's been very quiet and not good in the games. Now, with him, I can kind of excuse it a bit more because Rooney's system, for whatever reason, and we've seen it with Hardy and Gray as well, just isn't set up to build a great deal of chances for the strikers. Seen something in the comments, Aaron.
Yep.
Not set up to build a great deal of chances for the strikers. We have definitely got better at creating chances under Rooney than in the first few games of his tenure. That's beyond doubt. but it does appear to be more set up for the inside forwards to have chances rather than the strikers. So maybe Obafemi, I can excuse him being in games less, more so than I can Wright. Yeah, look, he won us the game with a moment of quality, so absolutely can't argue that. Made a fantastic impact, but I wonder if Andre Gray, maybe that combination works, having him run the defenders ragged a bit for the first hour, be a bit of a nuisance, speed up, certainly against Derby or a physical side, be a long ball outlet, and then let Obafemi come on against tired legs. I would probably actually, in hindsight, stick with that combination. And then you've got Hardy as well as another option.
Yeah, David, as I've mentioned, 4 touches, 1 goal. Michael Obafemi got given the Sky Sports Man of the Match last night. Are you having that? If you're in the dressing room, you'd be fuming, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely not. No, I'm not having as much as he's a match winner. If I've been slogging around for 90 minutes, and someone comes on with 4 touches and gets man of the match, yeah, he's getting some stick in the changing room anyway. But he looked he handful, didn't he? I mean, he's bullied 2 lads there really. He's done well with the first one just to do enough to stop him getting a header on it, and then the second one he's just too strong for him. He looks a big, strong handful. I haven't seen too much of him, but I'm looking at him thinking he should be a nightmare for defenders just with his size, his strength, his power. But it seems to be maybe he might be a bit more on the impact player at the minute. I don't know, what his fitness level's like. He looks like a big guy. But yeah, he did what he was supposed to do yesterday. I mean, that was you can't ask for any more to come on to impact the game. And he's got such a big important goal. So yeah, you can't really argue with it. The same with Gray. Like I think I don't think it wasn't working too much for him. I think the referee didn't really give him anything, but he was a handful. He was hard work for the defenders. They knew they were in a game with him. He was pinning them and pulling them down. And if he had a little bit more support, I could see that working. But yeah, as for the goal scorer, he did exactly what was what you hope to do when you make a sub like that.
Yeah, John Mousinho was absolutely fuming at the full-time whistle. I don't know if anybody's seen the tunnel cam today, but not too happy at that. It was only a little shrug on Regan Paul. He's turned him around. But on that, at the other end, the man who got the assist, finally a championship clean sheet, Adam. Thoughts on Grimshaw's performance? Like I said, finally we get that championship clean sheet.
It's going to give him a boost, without a doubt. And there's a lot of conversation about Grimshaw at the minute, as I guess you'd kind of expect, as a team that ships a lot of goals, as we have for much of the campaign. Eyeballs always going to be on the goalkeeper, good or bad. We saw last season, Rotherham were appalling at the back, but Victor Johansson shone as a result of that. Because of the amount of opportunities he had to save shots, he's out to move, and by all accounts, is performing to an even higher standard. Grimshaw has split opinion a little more, and this isn't necessarily just based on yesterday's performance. I've always been more pro than against based on what he's done so far. I think yesterday was exactly what we needed from him, in the sense that he's, aside from I think perhaps the very first save that he made, which was, I think, the one that led to their offside goal, but wouldn't have been offside had Grimshaw not saved. I don't know. That one right at the start, which I thought was an excellent save. I don't necessarily think he's made loads of world-class ones, but he's made consistent number of saves and never really looked in danger of spilling them to an on-rushing forward. Never looked like he was going to miss out, Robert Green it into the back of his net. He has that sort of aura about him as a shot stopper. And yesterday, fantastic. And I think his distribution is still a huge plus. And I've said it before, and no doubt I will say it again. Upgrading on Michael Cooper is practically impossible, but one thing you could upgrade on was his distribution. And with Grimshaw, I'm very sure we've done that. He still has a lot of work to do with crosses, or even not necessarily crosses, even with just the ball in the air and in and around the 6-yard box. The moment yesterday, the only time where I think he looked a bit flustered was when he had probably a couple of chances to come and claim the ball and ended up just punching it away from under his own crossbar. I think that's something that he needs to work on, and to be honest, we've known he's needed to work on for a while. So there's absolutely stuff to do there. But we, as Argyle fans, have been spoiled for many years to have Michael Cooper. And the Sheffield United fans are being spoiled now, and if he keeps playing as he is, there'll be Premier League fans who'll be delighted to have Cooper between the sticks. So replacing him like for like was literally impossible. But the player we've got, who's better with the ball at his feet, who's a good shot stopper, if not an outstanding one, and gave us that air of confidence yesterday, even when we were under pressure, to make the saves he needed to, and keep that first clean sheet, which I hope is going to give him even more confidence. I can't really knock it at the minute in terms of business alone. I think he's still going to split opinion, and he's still going to, if the style keeps going the way that it is, we're still going to see a lot of him, both in possession with the way that we like to play back to him, and out of possession with the sheer number of shots we give away. So he's going to have a chance to shine, and hopefully he does, because I do rate him, I really do, and performances like yesterday's will go a long way to getting everyone on board.
Yeah, there was a comment popped up from Dan in the comments asking if I've changed my mind on Grimshaw, that he's been, I'm just doing the host job for him, that he's been outstanding. And look, I wasn't totally unconvinced by him. I just wasn't convinced fully by him either. And possibly to an extent, I'm still not. There are still a few areas around crosses, but in this day and age, this is a changing game. And anyone in the game now will tell you distribution is absolutely huge. Absolutely enormous from a goalkeeper. And like Cooper's distribution wasn't awful by any means. It certainly was a lot better than Hazard's, but Cooper's distribution was probably about middle of the field for this league. Grimshaw's distribution, I think, is genuinely top end for this league. And for a team that really wants to play out from the back under Rooney, more so than we did under Foster and under the caretaker spell of Neil Dewsnip, he really offers us a lot in that department. I mean, David, from your point of view, obviously the game changed so much throughout your career. Is that something that really benefits you, having a goalkeeper who can play out?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really happen much, like you say, back in my day. But just having a keeper who was comfortable, kicking the ball out and finding areas and putting it in areas where it needs to be, where you are, where you want to play from. So yeah, it's a massive, having good distribution it is so important. But from what I've seen of him as well, his confidence on the ball, and that breeds confidence then throughout the team. He doesn't never look flustered. I mean, he's very comfortable on the ball, and he'll play a riskier pass, but he'll pull it off because he knows exactly what he's doing. So I like him, and I'd feel confident having that type of person. When the ball's laying back to him, knowing that his distribution is that good, it's definitely a bonus.
Sam, one last question on the Portsmouth game itself before I've got a few questions for David, and then we can move on to the Derby preview, where we are 40 minutes in, and we like to keep these under an hour, so short and sweet. As you are our resident body language expert, as demonstrated by the time that Tiamani Diagouraga waved goodbye to Home Park, a few questions come in about Whittaker's body language at the end of the game. It's easy to read too much into that, but he didn't look too happy, did he?
No, he didn't at all. Look, there's ways of looking at it. I think maybe it was just him being frustrated at his own performance. He did have a poor game, lack of contribution from himself, and obviously he holds himself to very high standards. And I think that maybe it was just that he was just kicking himself a bit that he got subbed off. The fact he wasn't having a good game in the attacking sense of it. I'm sure you hear a lot of players say in the media or whatever. And I'm sure David would probably maybe agree or disagree with this. I don't know, but even a lot of the time when you win, if you know you've had a poor game, you'll still be frustrated with yourself and not hitting your own standards. So I think that's maybe what we saw from Whittaker. Look, there's other ways of looking at it. I know that there's, I do think that, how can I put this? I don't think he's unhappy at Argyle, but I think he's not so decisively happy as he was in that first half of last season. He was scoring every week. The fans absolutely loved him. He even had the chance to go to Lazio and preferred to stay and play under Ian Foster. He's, I feel if he was offered that chance again, he'd be off on a flight to Italy, quick, and you can say cheerio. But I'm not saying he actively wants to leave, but he made quite an interesting comment that sort of got picked up on around social media in his press conference after the deadline day, that sort of said he was on his phone all day. I was like, well, why are you on your phone all day if you've got no interest in leaving? That to me was a little bit of a red flag of a comment. I mean, look, it could have just been the fact that he meant his agent was calling him all day rather than him being the one to drive it. It's the benefit of the doubt, but there are a few indicators that I think he's not as happy as he was before. I mean, his lovely fiance did tweet Rooney's appointment. She was slightly less than pleased about the news. She very quickly deleted that tweet, of course, that she was very, very unhappy that we'd appointed Rooney, given Morgan's him at Derby. So I think there is a little, or certainly was a bit of bad blood between Whittaker and Rooney at Derby. You'd like to hope that they're putting it behind them and they're working together. But I don't know. I just get the sense that at the minute Whittaker is sort of tolerating things rather than loving things. I could be totally wrong on that. Maybe I'm way off, but I feel, put it this way, I feel if he gets a chance to move to Italy in this January, he's hot-tailing it. I do. But look, maybe that's me reading too much into it, and I do think that to a large extent it is just him being frustrated with his own performance. I think it's a bit of both, in all truth.
Yeah, hopefully, and like you said, if he could go back in time and take that offer from Lazio whilst playing under Ian Foster, I'm sure he would do that in a heartbeat. Question, David, from Jacob says, What would it be like to play under Rooney? Obviously, you've not played under Wayne yourself, but you made, was it 50 odd appearances under Roy Keane? What's it like to play for a manager that's won it all? And is it like added pressure, or do you listen to them more, or do you take more from them?
Yeah, I think they gain instant respect for what they've done in the game, and obviously for me, for example, Rooney or Keane. I love them both as players, so automatically I would want to play for them. I'd want to give everything for them because of what they've done in the game and because of how much of a fan I was of them. For what they've done, and also, they have an aura about them. They're big characters. I mean, Roy Keane could just walk into a room or wherever we were when we was having food or whatever, and you could just feel his presence in there. And I'm sure it would be the same with Wayne. He's such a big player, big character. I would expect it to be the same. So personally, I would love to play under him. I really like him. I want him to do well. I said when he was appointed that he doesn't need to take that job. He's moved down. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need that. He could have tried to get something a bit closer. But I think he wants to do well as a manager. And it's just whether he is good enough as a manager. But for me personally, I've got a lot of time for the effort he's putting in to try and make it work, and I really hope it does for him. But to play under him, yeah, I'd love to. Any person like that, like I did, as much as Roy Keane has that reputation and he is hard work to play under, I actually did like playing under him.
Are there certain players in a dressing room that are going to become managers? Because I imagine it's something that you've not thought about really.
Yeah, no, it wasn't for me. I wasn't so interested in the tactics. In fact, I didn't actually like too much information personally, because I would overthink it if I had too many instructions. So for me, it was just give me a couple of what's my job, and let me just go out and play. So I was never too into the tactical side of things or the coaching side of things. And I mean, there's some that you just know. I mean, if you look at from my time there, your Wattses, your Cockos, you kind of knew with the way they were around how authoritative they were and how into it they were, that they would go on and have some sort of coaching or managerial career. Where there's some that you probably don't think would. And they go on and do it as well. So yeah, I think there's normally in most teams there's a couple of standout candidates where you're not surprised if they go on and become coaches or managers.
Yeah, and the last one on Portsmouth and Argyle, what have you made of both teams? Do you think either side or both sides have enough about them to stay up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tough. It could potentially be a long season for both, but I was just looking at the table before, and it's so I think it goes up to 12th, and there's a 3-point difference, so it's a typical championship. It's going to be difficult. I'm sure there's going to be lots of twists and turns, and you've just got to give yourself a chance. The aim is to stay up. I'm sure after last season for Argyle, they would like to have, progressed onto that. But as it stands now, I think the aim is to stay up, and the same for Portsmouth too. And obviously, I like the Portsmouth manager. I think he did a brilliant job, and I think he's a very good manager. I think they've had a lot of injuries. I think he's given the lads from last season a chance to prove themselves, and I think they got to a point now where they realise that they're probably going to have to, invest a little bit more and change things a little bit. So I'm still hopeful they'll get out of it. And the same for Argyle. I mean, it's frustrating with Argyle, just with some of the performances and the wins and that they have got, and in spells how they seem to be able to turn it on, and then the following game just it's chalk and cheese. So it's frustrating. It's going to be a little bit inconsistent, but yeah, it's going to be tough. I'd like to see them both stay up. I think it's going to be a long season potentially for both. But looking at the table, there's so much in there that that can get involved and go on short, decent runs, and you'll jump up the table. And yeah, it's really, really tight.
Yeah, looking at the other side that you've played for in the Championship, Leeds, it looks like they might stay up as well. So that'd be a good season for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
they might manage to stay down. Actually, to be fair, knowing them. Moving on to a bit of a. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Ipswich definitely won't stay up there, will they? Of its former clubs, I think they're.
Wow, they're fine. That has been a tough start, hasn't it? Wow. And then the way it's just going, sometimes they're conceding last minute goals, and you're just thinking, is it just going to be one of them seasons? Again, that they've done so well to jump up the leagues like they have. It might just be one too many. We'll have to wait and see. And Leeds, the pressure's on. They have to go up this season. Otherwise, I think the manager will be gone if he lasts that long, because they're going to have to be right at the top end, which they've been on a better run recently, and they've got every chance. I think they might be losing right now, but their expectations are totally different. They need to go up.
Yeah, moving on to a little bit of a derby preview. As David said, their Leeds are losing 1-0 to Millwall, but the other game that sort of affects us, not really, we're only 14 games in, but affects us a little bit, is Derby are leading Coventry 1-0, so they're currently sitting 13th. Obviously, we visit Pride Park on Saturday. Obafemi came off the bench on Tuesday night to make an impact. The last time we were at Pride Park, if I've got my facts right here, Sam, I'm sure you'll correct me, Sam Cosgrove Day, another player that came off the bench to change things up. Can you see another win up at their place?
That was the last away game in the league that I wasn't at, Sam Cosgrove Day. I missed a couple of the Pizza Cup games. I went to the final, but I didn't go in the early stages. But that Derby game, I was all set to go, and I came down with shingles the days before the game, and my mates have never let me forget it that I missed a comeback from 2-0 down. I've been to every away game since then, and I've seen not that many wins apart from in the title season. And even then, we were much worse away than we were at home. So that day holds bittersweet feelings for me, and that it was a clearly incredible win. But I really wish I was able to be there. Sorry, what was the question again?
Just how do you see us playing up at Derby? You see us getting a win?
Okay. Logically, no. Logically, no, because we're away from home, and I have zero faith in us away from home. That's the complete truth of it. I do feel it's one of those games where the sort of Murphy's Law of football dictates that we'll win, just because with it being Rooney and Whittaker going back to their former club, Derby having got a win to end a bit of a bad run, they'll be seeing that as a game they can really push on. And above all, the two fellas who run the second tier pod, who are both avid Derby County fans, have been given it absolutely large about Rooney all season, particularly drawing reference to Rooney's poor away record and to Argyle's poor away record. And just today, in fact, they've released a YouTube video giving their view of why they don't think Rooney will make it in management. And I think all of that is absolutely building up to the sod's law of us getting our first away win of the season at Derby County, and the home fans being very frustrated at Wayne Rooney and Morgan Whittaker coming back and getting a win at their former club. So it's going to defy all logic, but I think football is a funny game, and it's just one of those ridiculous things that might just happen because there's so much sod's law leading up to it. So don't ask me why or how. I think we might get a win.
Yeah, Adam, we've obviously got one more day to prepare than they have. Obviously, they are playing currently, and if you take out tonight's score, pretend that it hasn't happened. we have similar records. At home, we have the 8th best record in the league. They have the 9th. Away from home, if I quickly change FOTMob, they have the 23rd best record in the league. We have the 24th. So they're quite similar to us in the fact that they can pick up results at home but can't buy a win away, apart from tonight, which has ruined.
Not over yet. Not full time yet.
Yeah,
Well,
plenty
very
of time.
true. How do you see Saturday going?
Yeah. If I'm honest, it feels like that's where the similarities end. And I think when you're looking at it in a sense of, well, one team's good at home and one team's poor away, it's hard not to back the home team. I mean, it would be delicious for Rooney and Whittaker to go back to Pride Park and get a win after everything that's happened all season. As a man once said, I would love it if we went there and beat them. Love it. Do I see it? That's another question entirely. I mean, Derby quite a physical side. They will at home with their record try and put us on the back foot, and to be honest, they'll probably manage it. I've got an awful suspicion that they'll match up to us a little bit like Cardiff did, with with the way they go forward, but particularly with set pieces. They're a very, very strong set piece side based on what I've seen, and we're not at either end of the field. So when you pair that with the set piece record with the fact that we've got an awful away record and we're travelling, yeah, I'm not convinced, shall we say? I'm not convinced, but I'd love Sod's Law to prove us wrong.
Yeah, we appear to have lost David. So I believe maybe his phone's got out of battery or something, which is absolutely brilliant because I was about to ask him a question about setting up differently away from home under Paul Sturrock. So moving on, Sam, or maybe Adam's the one to ask this actually because of his excellent written previews. And if you haven't checked out Argyle Life and subscribed to our Substack, make sure you go and do that. I would pretend that there's a link in the description below, but there most probably isn't because I'm not that organised. Adam, Derby's key players that we need to look out for.
Ooh, good question. I've focused them more as a team than I have individuals, so
okay.
you've caught me off guard. Yeah, I don't know. They've lined up, as far as I recall, with Corey Blackett-Taylor, who was one of our targets a little while ago, and he's been dangerous wins alongside Caden Jackson, the former Ipswich player. So two familiar foes, I imagine. At least one of them is going to get there, or get at us out wide. Yeah. In terms of the Iron, I think he's called Iron Cashin. I think that's how you say it. At the back, who's been with them for a while and seems to be improving all the time. So there's a few players around there. I think, to be honest, though, as I've said before, I think it's a collective more than anything than individuals that suited Derby this season. I think at home they do it differently to us, but their record is still very strong, and I think it's a case of greater than the sum of their parts. So yeah, I don't necessarily think there are any massive standouts, but I think there are a few around the pitch who could cause us a few issues. Those names I've reeled off, and now I've done it, it'll almost certainly be someone else.
Yeah, going back to Sam's comment about Sod's Law, I feel like it's Sod's Law that Curtis Nelson and Sonny Bradley are both going to score in a 2-0 win. So that would be fun, wouldn't it? David, obviously, a question from James Brenton. He said, would you change to a 3-5-1-1 at Derby? Our usual setup away from home clearly hasn't worked all season. Only asking you that because obviously you played under Paul Sturrock, who famously used to set up slightly differently away from home. Is that something that Rooney should look at?
I'm not sure. I don't know if he has played it before.
I'm not the tactics nerd to ask. I think
so. I mean,
not wanted here anyway.
I wouldn't be doing anything drastic where players are trying to learn different roles with a couple of days going into a game. So I probably wouldn't change it. I don't know. I didn't. From what I've heard from the Leeds game, I don't know if it was so much as the way it was set up as the mentality to it. It felt like it was, we're going to sit back and hold, maybe try and counter on the counter attack and be a little bit too defensive, because Leeds were always going to score And so as soon as they did, it's very hard to get out of that mindset then to then go on the offensive. I've played in games like that where you're almost going for the draw. It's not great for a player to be in the negative mindset and hold a shape. I mean, once you've got a lead, it is, and there's some of your best wins when you're all digging in and trying to get a result. But yeah, I think it's just I don't want to see such a negative approach to an away game. I'd like to see them, have a little bit more of a go. I think the fans also will forgive you a little bit more if it looks like you've had a go and you're just not good enough, rather than sometimes if you're trying to hold and counter attack, they score and then the game just peters out and you don't really lay a glove on them or have much of a go for the travelling fans. It's frustrating. So yeah, I think I wouldn't maybe so much change anything drastically tactically. I would like to maybe change the mindset of, what, let's have a go. We're off the back of a win, albeit not a great performance, but let's get at these. It's a nice stadium to go and play in. They normally get decent crowds, so let's take it to them. I'd probably prefer that sort of approach.
Yeah, I'm. Stan will correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't really remember certain patterns of away form that you would have been involved in for Argyle. Sam will remember the date, the time, the minute you scored in, etc. But is there something psychological with being in Plymouth and having to travel away? Because obviously we know it's in the arse end of nowhere, and obviously our form on the road has never really been good, apart from maybe one season under Derek Adams where it went the other way around. Is there a psychological disadvantage at being so far away?
I guess there possibly is if you let it.
Right.
Remember, most of the time when you're playing on Saturday, you're traveling on a Friday. Now I know they can be long days because of the traffic, but your preparation is still normally gives you plenty of time to relax, to eat. The next morning you can have your line if you want. You've got your pre-match, so your preparation shouldn't really affect it too much. But then as soon as I left Argyle and used to speak to other players at other teams about coming down there, they absolutely hated it. They hated the travel. They hated how far away it was, and it affected them. And that's why we were pretty successful, because if we knew they hated it, and we would get straight into them early into a game normally with a high intensity, and just make them think, oh, it's just going to be one of them. Yeah, it's long, horrible days. But yeah, traveling away, I think the luxury of it these days isn't so bad. But I mean, it's how you approach it. If you let it get to you, then yeah, it's going to have an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, Adam, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on Portsmouth Derby, anything before we just do score predictions and call it a night? No, good, correct. Score predictions, Sam, for Saturday.
I'm gonna in our predictions game that we played that Ben runs, I said a draw. As I've said, it almost feels like Wednesday away goal coming, never mind the away win. But I think we're gonna kill two birds with one stone, and I think it'll be back-to-back 1-0. So I'm gonna go heart overhead. I am. Haven't done that
Adam?
for a while.
Fair play. Yeah, I'm not going to be the natural optimist next to Mr. Natural Optimist over here. So yeah, I mean, for me, just based on what I've said before, and I say this with the knowledge that if I'm proved wrong, I'll be one of the happiest men in the world. I just think it'll be a bit too much this one. I think 2-0 Derby is the most likely, and yeah. As Sam said, it's rare to see us score an away goal, let alone get an away win. So yeah, 2-0. Prove me wrong, boys.
Yeah, I've got a head and a heart. My head is saying a 2-0 defeat, and my heart is saying a 3-2 win in the Sam Cosgrove mould, in which Ryan Hardy comes off the bench this time and bags a brace. That would be lovely. David, I don't know if you want to give us a score prediction, you can, but obviously, whilst we've got you on, give you a plug. Obviously, online personal training at the moment, and you're looking for football fans. Is that right?
Wow, yeah. I mean, I work with the guy you guys know, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm actually working with another couple of Argyle fans as well. So I'm doing the online personal training. I've tended to find a bit of a niche in. It's normally guys 30 to 60 who have let themselves go a little bit, been focusing on maybe family, work, that side of things, and want to get back into shape and want to feel better about themselves. And so I've got a nice little group now of that type of genre, which is away from the athletes that I've trained before, but I'm really enjoying it, really enjoying seeing results. So yeah, if there's any football fans out there that are looking to feel better about themselves, to be a bit healthier, to be be in a position to chase after their kids and lose a bit of body fat, then yeah, just give me a shout on any of the social medias. I'm on them all, and I'll see if I can help you out. But yeah, a little plug there. Appreciate that, top man.
That's all right. I'm a big fan of Sam's dad in the comments, seeing if you can get Sam involved. You're on mute, but
I don't know what he's trying to say with that at all.
That's absolutely brilliant. I fit most of that criteria, apart the fact I'm 29 and yet to turn 30. But so on my 30th birthday, I'll give you a call. Renka says, David, would you allow me to join just to talk about that cross to Mickey Evans once a week? But yeah, like I said, absolutely brilliant having you on, David. Thanks for joining us. And I think that's everything.
Can I just quickly add, if anyone's enjoyed listening to David and wants to hear more about his Argyle career, you can still hear the My Argyle Life interview that me and Aaron did with David a few months ago. That can be found on Spotify, Apple Music. If you enjoyed listening to David, want to hear more, we did speak to him a little while ago, but we went into a little bit more detail about your career, didn't we, David? So if you enjoyed this, I'm sure you'll enjoy that as well. So go back and have a little listen.
Sam, you're getting good at these plugs, mate. You might have to chuck some into actual Pies videos when you get the chance, because you never seem to do that when I ask you to. So cheers, guys. I think we'll call that a night.